Very good morning to you. Today is Thursday, 23rd of July, 2026. My name is Francisco Gaffney, and this is my daily streaming all about governance, risk, compliance, and advisory boards. And yesterday we talked about growth and capital, and today we are moving into the bottom of the advisory board operating system, which is our controls and resilience, so everything related to performance, governance, risk, and compliance, and your assets in the organization, right? How they operate, what they do, and how to take the most advantage of it. So also remember that this week I'm focusing on the value creation from the advisory board's perspective, right? So we like to make sure that actually advisory boards are there to increase the valuation of the company, to add value to the organization. So that is the focus of this week. Now, your systems, your assets, your governance, risk, and compliance and performances is where many boards or founders or executive teams get caught many times, because it's something that actually is leave like somebody is going to mind it. And particularly one term that I actually want to bring to your attention, because I think it's taken very lightly. The term or the word is resilience, and they say many times is taken as a technical issue, right? Like IT will handle it, compliance will handle it, risk will track it. Then what happens? An incident lands, and the business discovers the issue was never only technical. It was leadership visibility. It was control maturity. It was whether the company knew which services had to keep running, which third parties could fail, and how fast the business could recover. And all these things are lightly known or spread around, but not put together in an evidence of a proof or a triage. What to do, when, why, and who to connect next, and who is the owners of the situations when they happen. So what I just described is resilience. So if you don't have all these things together, so probably you might have a problem. So let's take a look at three of them in these circumstances. Problem number one is that resilience is not or is not tested enough. It's taken as a theory, as I mentioned. So a board or yourself as a founder or executive team may say, we are resilient, and leave it there. And many times, because having coming across different circumstances, you say, yeah, we went through, we are good. But that's not all. It needs evidence. It needs maps. It needs tests. It needs owners. It needs to know what failed last time and what changed afterwards. So then you start to get a culture of resilience, because actually, if you cannot track what's going on, how you manage and how you evidence that, and which are the mechanisms of control for the future, then probably you're going to fall or kick the same stone down the road, right? Problem number two is that the threat level is higher than many boards packs suggest, or many founders think, or many executive teams believe that they are in managing. So cybersecurity is one of them. Supplier failure is another one. System outage is another one. Data errors is a very common one. Third-party failure and access weaknesses are not rare technical oddities. They are very common. And they can hit customers, cash, trust, operational, and they can hit very quickly. And sometimes, and you say that, like the Murphy laws, you say, well, if something is going to go wrong, it will go wrong, right? So it's not to be pessimistic or negative, but actually you think about it. So we are talking about resilience, how we prevent these things, how we detach ourselves from this mentality of, if something will go wrong anyways, and we create mechanisms to avoid them or just to prevent them. Not to go deep into that, let's look into problem number three. If is that control failures are expensive and public, and this is something actually, this is a consequence, not the causes. So weak controls do not stay hidden forever, right? A data problem, as I mentioned, recovery failure, a poor handover. Sometimes a poor handover is a cause of several headaches afterwards, or supplier weaknesses can move straight into reputational damage, client concerns, or even worse, regulatory attention. You don't want that nasty note coming through your desk asking for an inspection, an audit, or a report. Now, in other words, imagine resilience as the fire door of your business, right? You don't inspect it when the building is calm because you enjoy paperwork. Yeah, so these guys are probably have seen this testing the alarms on the roof or the fire door. They don't test it because they like to fill the paperwork and do the checklist. They inspect it when to make sure that when it happens, it's all in the working condition and doing the proper function that they are designed for. So inspect it because one day people may need it to open it in an emergency and must work properly. That's why you do it. Now, so as a board advisor, what I would propose to consider is the following. First, define the important business services that matter most to your customers, your cash flow, and your trust. Not every process is equal. The board needs to know what absolutely must stay running. And when I say the board, I say also yourself as a founder, also the executive team. For example, what service would hurt customers faster if it failed, right? Is it distribution? Is it production? Is it the stock or overstocking? Well, what is going to hurt the customer first or the fastest? What would damage cash flow? What would damage trust? What would create a legal or compliance exposure, right? So the second thing to test is the weak joints. And what I mean with these weak joints is a third party suppliers, for example, or services. People actually you are outsourced to provide services to you, or identity controls, right? Recovery time. Identity control, for example, it might be it's not actually identity theft that people say, oh, they stole a badge and we have a person that we don't know inside our building. No, like who is the people approving what and why they are doing it and why they are not doing it. These are the kind of identity controls. So recovery times is something that actually test. These are the kind of things actually bring one thing to the next one in the flows of the organization. Data handle, escalation routes, supplier dependencies, manual workarounds, as I mentioned earlier. So these are weak joints that are often where resilience fails first. So they are already known for a risk asset management, but you have to make a map of that to understand where they are. And the third thing to suggest is move resilience out of the specialist silo into a board rhythm, or you as an owner rhythm, or your executive team rhythm. What I mean with this is actually had to be on site for you to look into this every month or every quarter or every 6 months. Resilience is not a separate from growth, is not a separate from capital, and is not separate from reputation. It's all tied together. So if the company wants funding, the business must be trusted. That is part of your resilience. If the company wants to grow, the services must hold, right? That is part of your resilience. If the company wants transformation or innovation or to be relevant for the next 6 months, year, to 5 years, etc., the systems must cope, right? And when we're talking about systems, and we mentioned workflows, approvals, processes, operational procedures, etc., etc. So this is where the rotating advisory board helps. And how? So one is because of different stages of the organization. So what do you need now that need help, or you don't have visibility, or you hear and I say, well, we don't have that. Do we need it or not? That's a good question. So one stage might be a need for cyber expertise, or need of operational resilience, as I mentioned, or maybe a data protection expert, or mainly supplier risk assessments, or a need a control of design, right? A design, how you design your controls. So the mix changes as the risk profiles changes. So a good advisory board can say things like, well, resilience is being described, but not tested enough, right? So you might say, well, we have all these problems, we have those situations, but where are the tests? Where's the evidence? So the business knows the risk, but not the recovery proof. Where the mechanisms to recovery, not even to test if something goes wrong and how you cope with that, is how you recover from that. Where is the proof that you can recover from that? And we say, oh, we never thought about that. So this a good advisory board can put these kind of things, or at least the plans together, so you can have these things out of your mind and somebody's taking care of it. Other things that might be too much assurance is sitting in specialist language instead of the board level evidence, or you as an owner evidence, or your C-suite, or something that can be provided outside your organization. And sometimes this is dangerous because actually it's so complicated that people doesn't understand. So, for example, I don't want to get dramatic here, but if you have an ambulance coming to your factory, for example, and it's a chemical organization, and you say, oh, and you start to go about chemical components, gas exposure, they are paramedics. They are not chemists, specialists in mixing strange materials. So you have to bring it down to which are the procedures based on the material that you're handling. And this is a silly example, but actually I think that you can understand that when I mean specialist language instead of evidence language. Now, this is useful, even if you say, well, you put me under pressure here because I have to do things that we haven't done before. It's true, but actually it's part of the resilience. Now, what do you gain working with me? 3 specific things: outcomes, differentiators, and risk reductions. In terms of outcomes, is a working resilience layer. The company becomes easier to finance, easier to trust, and harder to disrupt, which is the most important thing. The differentiator is a rotating international advisory board focused on the exact resilient gap facing the company today. You get the right mix of governance, controls, cybersecurity, operational design, and recovery planning capabilities faster than hiring one executive and with a lower overhead than a big consulting firm with no talent locked in. This is a risk reduction. It's a false assurance. Members of the advisory boards can be swapped every 6 months as the risk profile changes. So the board is not stuck with a static structure that no longer fits the needs or the plan of the organization. So one action you can take home today, and it's very doable, is in 30 minutes or less. And let me show the supporting image. Here it is, our one-pager resilience map. It's very easy to do. It's not hard to do. Let me explain how you do it. So before your next meeting, or when you're going to address these topics about resilience and risks, request this one-pager resilience map. Show the top 5 most important business services that you're providing, then describe the impact tolerance, the material controls, the current weaknesses, and named the owners, right? So things like you like to find here are the third-party dependencies, the maximum tolerance downtime for each one of them, and the last time each one has been tested, right? So having these, at least you have a starting point where to start to talk about resilience with very, very clear action points based on your business and what is the evidence you need to collect and the proof of the recovery plans. So if you cannot produce that page, probably resilience is not yet clear enough. And the proactive planning, you need to look into proactive planning, operational agility, and financial health more closely. So let's pause it here for today and reconvene tomorrow, because tomorrow we move into transformation and reinvention, your innovation, because a company that only protects what is already is probably living in the past and is not catching up with the times or getting ready for the future, how they are becoming relevant for the future. So if you're a founder, a chair, non-executive director, or in a C-suite, and you want an international advisory board to strengthen your controls, sharpen resilience, and provide real evidence rather than generic assurance, let's have a 30-minute chat. I can understand. So I would love to understand actually where you're coming from, where you are today, what you're looking for, and how the systems, milestones in our advisory board operating system will work in your organization. Have a great